Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of West Coast Gridiron. I'm your host, Coach Freeman, and today I'm going over the 4-2-5 defense and just some different things that I've done out of it and some little coverages here and there. So just jumping right into it. First of all, thank you all those that are listening, and make sure you check out the Coach Freeman West Coast Gridiron Instagram and TikTok. As of today, there will be a giveaway for the book West Coast Gridiron Journey to Becoming a Head Coach. So make sure you get over there and check that out and enter into that as well. Share, comment, coach, and send it to somebody who you think might need that book. All right, let's jump into it. 4-2-5 defense. So, a couple things as far as alignment and how I've run it. Again, this is how I've run it. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone does things a little bit differently as far as, little tweaks here and there. So, how I ran it for years out of the 4-2-5 is these six guys were run, run, run. These six were kind of taken away from these five. So, it was basically like a separate version. The box was separate from the secondary. Out of the 3-3 stack, which I'll go over later, or the 3-5-3, it was still kind of that way, but the inside backers were connected to the safeties in a way that where if one guy was blitzing, then that would what we called pull the chain, and then that would adjust their coverage. So they had to know who was blitzing. But as far as the 4-2-5 goes, here's how we taught it base look. So the defensive linemen here, these guys were in twos, and then these guys were in sixes. Now, I know some of you say, well, no, that's a 5. I did the count really simple. So, for example, we literally did anything over the center was a 0. Anything shaded over the guard was a 1 to the inside. Anything head up was a 2. Outside was a 3. Inside the tackle was a 4. Head up was a 5. Outside was a 6. Inside the tight end was a 7. Head up the tight end was an 8. Outside the tight end was a 9. So if there was a tight end here, depending on what we want to do with him, we could shade him at a 7. We could put him head up, or we could put him outside shade. Now, of course, we put him outside shade. Then we'd have to play games here, maybe put him head up to inside, bring him in the box, and then make some adjustments. And that way we were gap sound. Usually we played him on the inside, and we basically bracketed him with these two. He would make sure he didn't get a free release. He'd always pop him and then sit in his gap. And then this guy, basically, these two were then responsible for those two to make sure that as far as coverage would go, depending on what we did, that he was always covered. If he went to the flat, we took him to the flat. If he went vertical, he would carry him and then he'd be over the top, depending on what the coverage was, whether it was quarters, cover 2 or cover 3. All depends on what we were doing. But in any case, so these guys were always head up twos. And I did that because as an offensive line coach and as an offensive, and, just thinking offensively, head up made it a little bit difficult for the center to block back. Again, when he shaded, because a lot of teams, again, when they would run this defense, again, they would, depending on what their strength call was, he would be in a 3, he would be in a 1. Well, those just to me always gave easy angles. And I always loved coaching against a 4-man front, and I always loved playing against a 4-man front because the angles were easy. But you put these guys head up, and now if you're trying to run buck, or if you're trying to run pin and pull, or if you're trying to run trap, that angle for that tackle to get down is just a little bit more difficult to get to. Same with the center. It's just a little bit farther away for him to get to. Not saying they can't do it, not saying that you can't block it. I'm just merely saying I want to put these guys in a little bit better positions and make it harder while still being gap sound. Now, what we did base-wise is these two inside guys were responsible for the inside gap. These two guys were responsible for those inside gaps there. Just to make it easy, they were responsible base. If I didn't call any blitzes or any stunts or any slants, these two were responsible for A gap. And then my backers were responsible for the B gaps here. And then obviously these guys were my outside contain players on the C gap players here. And then we had contain, and then the free safety could play force depending on what the coverage was coming downhill. But we were gap sound across the inside 6 to make that easy. Again, we could play different games, but also the reason I did that was, again, to attack these guards. And then plus it was an easy read for them. So if this guy was trying to pull and he pinched, well, then you knew, and if that center came down, well, then he could just grab cloth. So if his job was to pull, then this guy's going to grab his cloth and follow him and then make the tackle in the backfield as he gets skinny and sticks on top of that guard. Again, they were reading the guards. They were playing games with the guards. It would be the same thing if he was trying to pull on any kind of pin pull. He would follow, because then that means he's releasing down, and then he's going to sit hard down inside and then spill it to our safety, depending, again, if we wanted to box or spill. So, again, basic stuff. And that's why I put them in the twos, because it gave them a little bit more leeway, allowed them to read the guards, and it didn't put them in much danger from the center and the tackles because they were a little bit farther away, made that block a little bit more difficult. And then these guys were guard readers. So we always read guards. We didn't read backs. Now, again, if this was a heavy zone read team, then yeah, we might cross key. So if this team's going to be heavy zone read and they're going to read my defensive end here and they're going to read him, he's going to be their read guy, then yeah, and they're going to just kind of go ahead and just try and block and get their double teams here. And then they're going to have their tailback basically bang, bend, or bounce. And then he's going to pull and go that way. Then yeah, we might cross key. He might read the back. He's going to read the quarterback. And so he's responsible for quarterback. He's responsible for tailback. Yeah, we could do something like that. Or we could also do it with the safeties as well. If we were in a too high shell, then we could do it to where maybe he's reading the back and he's reading the quarterback. I know that happened to us a few years ago. Back when I was at Casa, we found out that Folsom's free safety, he was responsible for the quarterback. So he always just read QB whenever he was pulling. So that was their fail safe here. So if he went down hard inside and he pulled, well, then the free safety knew he was coming down hard right now to meet our quarterback. And that's just what they did. And they did a really good job of it and took care of and made our zone read very difficult. So that's one way you want to do it. And then these two guys were basically just responsible for dive. So you had 6 guys all on the dive. The free safety was responsible for the pull. So that's pretty much how just base defense, how we played gap sound is, again, these two were responsible for C gap. These 2 guys are responsible for the A gaps. These 2 guys are responsible for B gap. These guys, obviously, they read their tackle, depending on what they did. These guys are reading guards. These 4 read guards, or these 4 read the inside 3. These guys read the outside. Now, as far as what we did with the defensive backs, we had a knight and we had a shield. Our base coverage was cover 7, or quarters man match, and I'll cover that as we get a little bit farther down. I might just make that its own separate video because quarters man match could take its own 30-minute video. So our knights and our shields, we did field and boundary with all these guys. So our knight, in case you didn't know, I coached at Rio Linda, so that was they were home of the Knights, so we made it really easy. Our knight was a field safety. Our shield was our boundary safety. Then we had a boundary corner and we had a field corner. We always pressed our corners. We said we're going to show press all the time, and that's just what we're going to show. We're going to make it hard on them to throw the ball. We're going to press. So that's essentially how we align there. Everything else was these guys were inside shade of the number 2, and then our free safety lined up whoever the number 3 was. So the back's right here. So he lined up over the back at roughly 10 to 12 yards, nothing too deep. And then these guys, same thing. They played with their alignments and we tinkered with them. Sometimes we had them linebacker depth at about 4. Other times we played them off anywhere between 5 to 7. We would play games with that. And again, depending on who was blitzing, then we could spin in and out of this. 9 times, I would say 9 times out of 10, we played our shield because a lot of times we played in the boundary. So if we were looking like this, then we used him as our cover 2 guy. So then we had our best 2 field defenders out here, and then we had our boundary corner and our shield corner, our shield safety out here. So we could play sky, we could play cloud, we could just play cover 2. So we could go quarter, half, and we could also, we could just rotate and do cover 3. Again, we were able to do a lot of different things with this, depending on that. Now, again, for those of you that coach defense, a lot of the times you're on a hash. You're not always in the middle of the field, which is why I hate 7-on-7. It's because what do offensive coordinators want to do, or quarterback guys or wide receiver guys want to do? Oh, we need to be in the middle of the field. No, you don't. You need to be moving hash to hash. You need to be more on the right hash than the left hash than you do in the middle. Base-wise, these guys were pressed inside shade. Our knight and our shield were basically inside shade, about a yard inside of the number 2. And then our free safety was lined up 10 to 12 over the number 3. So our base coverage was base cover 7. So we taught quarters man match. Very simple as far as the base coverage. These guys were man on demand or man outside and deep. So if this receiver went outside within 5, or if he pushed vertical with any kind of post or just a straight seam route or fade, then corner had him. If it releases with inside of 5 yards, if he releases inside doing any kind of in route or any kind of slant route, then he passes him off and he zones off his quarter. So if he gets any kind of zone or any kind of slant release, he's releasing inside, reroutes, and then sits to help with any kind of smash or corner route as far as that's concerned. Now, what would happen here, just because of our alignment, we would probably tell our shield, if we're in cover 7, he's probably going to be backed off a little bit more, because if we're running cover 7, again, he's going to be over the top of the number 3. And then so he's probably going to be more like anywhere between 7 to 8 yards off, because he has flats or number 2 late, depending on what we're doing. He has number 2 vertical. My apologies. He has number 2 vert. He has flats late. So if any of these guys push vertical, as far as a number 2, if he pushes vertical, he's got him. So if we get 4 verts, he's on his corner, he's on his man, and we're covered. If he runs a post route, then that's the shields. If he tries to run a post route, that's the corners. If they were to run a go, a post, and then the back out the backfield this way, he's going to drop. Sorry, good old huddle. He's there. He's going to drop underneath number 2 on his way to the flat. So he's going to reroute number 2 on his way to the flat. So as he reroutes to help the safety, he's not going to attack that until it's thrown. So if that quarterback just sits and sits, he's going to keep dropping underneath 1 and 2 until that ball is thrown. So again, that helps us keep everything deep, cover everything deep, so in that way we don't get hit with any kind of deep ball or anything like that. So that helps us keep everything in front of us. And then once it's thrown, then we rally. So if that's thrown and that's fine, then our backer's going to rally, DN's going to rally, safety, boundary corner, we're all going to rally to that. So he's got number 2 vert. He would have the number 2 vert. So again, he's going to widen out a little bit more. He's going to split if we're in base cover 7. And again, depending on how we're playing it, he could either be head up, he could be inside, and he might be outside the number 2 here to help with the vert. He could be inside because he's going to reroute on his way to the flat as well. So again, he's man on demand over here. He's rerouting to heading to the flat. So if they bubble this way, so for whatever reason, he pushes vertical, free safety is going to pick him up. And then again, he's got help to the flat as well. So he's going to help out. He's going to get underneath number 2 or number 3, depending on where if they're switching. Because again, now he's the new number 3. So he's helping getting under the new number 3 there. If they ran like a Texas route here or an angle route, whatever you want to call it, then that would be our Mike linebackers, as he would have the number 3 on that side. The same way if he went to this side and did the angle route over here, then he would end up having the number 3 on that side. So again, it's quarters man match. It's a little bit tricky. There's a lot of communication, but essentially we want to have 3/2 at all times. We want to have 3/2, 4/3. We want to have one more guy than they have in coverage. So again, no matter what kind of combination, so if they try to do a smash concept here, just for purposes here, so then what's going to happen? He's going to zone off his quarter. He's going to take number 2 vertical, so we end up having the corner covered. So now he's going to end up rerouting number 2 on his way to the flat. So now he has to make a choice, right? So as he reroutes number 2, he's following number 3. He gets underneath. He goes to the flat. So he's now covering the new number 1. He's now moving into the flat. Our Mike backers here, we have 4/3. So if he does throw that, now we have our Knight and our Mike linebacker attacking. And if he ends up throwing the hitch route, hopefully our Knight has got underneath it. If not, we have a rally play with our corner and our Knight there. So if anything, we're trying to just stop this post play right here. We're trying to stop this corner route. We're trying not to let them hit that hole. That's why we have 1 underneath, 1 over the top. So that's essentially how we would play that. Again, trips, totally whole other different conversation. I'm just trying to tell you how we play base. Our base coverage and quarters man match, or what we called cover 7 at the time. So we were trying to have 2/3. We're trying to have 3/2, and we were trying to have 4/3 if and when. But again, that's, you could play stump or stubby. That's a whole different animal. Like I said, cover 7, I might just do a whole video on that out of this front and whatnot. So games we could play as far as stunts would go. Again, this is basically a 4-3. If you really look at it, it's also a 4-4, but again, it's a 4-2-5. You got 2 inside linebackers. These guys are what we call hybrids. So that's how we played them. Then we played these guys. These two had to be really good field tacklers. He had to be our best athlete. And at the time when we played this defense, he also played quarterback for us. He was our best overall athlete. He was a fantastic tackler. He would come downhill real hard, and he basically commanded the defense as far as being able to get everybody in their right position. And then we had 2 inside linebackers that were seniors that did a really good job communicating as well. Our Mike linebacker actually also ended up playing quarterback for us too. He had a broken ankle at the beginning of the season. He ended up coming back late and taking over. And then, if we would have had him all season, the stuff we did in our last game when he took over as quarterback, we just marched down the field, and it was it was kind of one of those things where you look at it and you could have saw what was. But anyway, so that's our base coverage. Out of that, some of the basic stunts that we would do. Obviously, we would slant if we wanted to. We could slant to or away from the back. And again, a lot of things were field and boundary based. So if we wanted to slant out of this and we wanted to slant away from the back, then we would slant into these gaps here. And then we could bring either the mic or the will if we wanted to. We tried to stay away from bringing the knight and shield as much as we could. So if we brought this, we could bring the mic through here, or sorry, the will at this point through there, or we could bring the mic around the edge on that side. So again, those were just some of the things we did out of the 4-2-5. And again, if that happened, we would change the coverage a little bit because now we're bringing 5. So we would either change this to a man on the backside and still keep our quarters principle on this side, or we could try and play half. Or what we didn't get to, what we wanted to get to is kind of like what Indiana did, is we wanted to get to the point where he would basically be in charge of the flat. So we wanted to get it to where we could still run our quarters man match principles. It would just, while he's slanting, he's looking at that back and moving towards the flat. So if they try to do this, he would match that as he slanted. So then that way we would still have, because then that way he could release out and we could get our 4/3, 3/2 look, depending on what we wanted him to do. And we still had 3/2 on the backside. So we never got to that, but that was something we were tinkering with. And that's something, obviously, you can tinker with. Again, this is high school. I mean, as long as you're gap sound and you got everybody in a gap, you can kind of play games and see what you can do coverage wise. But I mean, obviously, high school is going to be run heavy. So you got to be gap sound, first of all. So that's our premise of the 4-2-5, and that was our base look at it. We had everybody, we had all gaps covered. We tried to have one guy extra in coverage, just so that way we always had the +1 advantage. And then we would play games. Didn't blitz a lot out of this. We blitzed more out of the 3-3 look versus the 4-2 look. So looking forward to setting that up for the next video. So again, if you like this, share this. Again, that's all I'm going to kind of get into for right now. I will do a whole nother video on coverages out of the 4-2-5, out of what we did here with our quarter, half, and our quarters man match, and our cover 1, cover 3, and I'll talk about how we spun and things of that nature. I'll do a whole nother video on that. But base look, that was our base alignment. Those were our base run reads as far as who had what gap and what we were reading. And then that was our base shell look out of our 4-2-5. So again, if you like this, please share, comment, like, subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Coach Freeman. This has been West Coast Gridiron. Remember, effort, discipline, execution. Have a great day.